Hello and welcome in, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Sparks, and today we're just going to be hanging out. We're going to be discussing CFL Free Agency. So I'm excited to be here. I really haven't ever gotten to my camera right here. Really haven't ever gotten to discuss CFL Free Agency like this, but I'm pretty excited. Turn so I can see my TV a little better here, and it's going to be really casual. We're just hanging out. Um, you know, I just want to talk CFL Free Agency. I got a list of depth charts here, things like that. So it's going to be, very chill environment. We're going to run down some of the key free agents. And of course, I'm going to be leaving every once in a while because with a 2 hour stream here, 3 hour stream here, there's going to be times where, I got to get up and go to the bathroom and stuff like that. So just keep it really, really chill. Looking at some of the key free agents here that we're starting out with, McLeod Bethel Thompson is up there, right? He didn't have exactly the kind of season that you would hope for out of a veteran that's been as long tenured as McLeod Bethel Thompson, but there's no doubt he's up there with like some of the most notable Canadian Football League quarterbacks, right? And so in 2025, right, he goes 9-9, right? 9 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Of course, he's never been much for a rushing threat. But if you're a team that's looking for solid quarterback play, at the very floor, you're going to get an even touchdown to interception ratio. Probably, I would say probably the most intriguing, let's say intriguing. Most intriguing free agent quarterback out there for the CFL is going to be Dustin Crum, former Kansas City Chief. And of course, as you can see, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, so I've been having fun keeping up with Dustin Crum's career. And Dustin Crum has been growing as a passer his entire time in the Canadian Football League. And this is evidenced here, right? He's never really gotten to be the full-time starter, just 6 starts last year. Of course, Drew Brown is their primary starter, and he went 14 touchdowns to 10 interceptions last year. But Crum was no slouch in the passing game. Over these 6 starts, he had 6 passing touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. And couple that with the fact that he is a rushing threat. Dustin Crum with 429 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns, right? Which I think was tied for the league lead or just was flat out the league lead. But what I'm saying is Dustin Crum is a guy who can provide you production in 2 facets of the game, right? As a running threat and as a passing threat as he continues to grow. And so really, when you look at it, he's probably, I would say, the best free agent quarterback available. Next up, you got Chris Streveler. Chris Streveler is kind of a traveled journeyman. He's not really anywhere near the top tier of CFL quarterbacks, but he's a guy that you know what you're going to get out of him, right? Now, he only had 5 starts, and in those 5 starts, he had 11 interceptions, which is not great, but 6 passing touchdowns, right? So he's averaging just a bit more than a touchdown a game. And he was able to provide plenty on the ground as he had 301 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. And then Trey Ford. Trey Ford has been kind of up and down his entire career in the CFL. And at times he looked like he was going to be the next big thing, and then he kind of tails off a bit. And Edmonton this offseason decided to go all in on Cody Fajardo. And since they did that, right, they saw it necessary to release Trey Ford. So a bit of a late addition to this field here. Of course, most of your other teams already have their quarterback situation figured out, right? So you really only got a couple of teams really looking heavily for quarterbacks. I'm just looking through here, right? So, of course, Edmonton solved. They got Cody Fajardo. They're going all in on him, right? In fact, in their last game, Ford was 3rd on the depth chart. Calgary, of course, they traded for Vernon Adams, right? And, of course, I would never trade away Vernon Adams, but I understand, right? If I was the Lions, I would have kept him for his entire career. I liked watching him on the Lions. But Vernon Adams has been very good throughout his career. Of course, Winnipeg was Zach Collaros, right? Still one of the top quarterbacks in the league. Hamilton with Bo Levi Mitchell and Jake Dolegala and Trevor Powell. No, Trevor Powell. I'm sorry, I'm not. Oh, Taylor Powell, who's a free agent, so I need to mark him out. Taylor Powell, also an interesting free agent there. Folks, I have run out of pen. Oh, here we go. All right, Taylor Powell, boop, Jake Dolegala, right? And so they do got some guys, and we're just kind of going through this position by position because the negotiating window doesn't actually open until 11 o'clock, and that's when things are really going to pop off. I love doing this for NFL free agency. I decided to dive into CFL free agency this year to do kind of the same thing. So yeah, I am. You can see I'm excited. Okay, Hamilton. Okay. Okay, Saskatchewan at quarterback, they got Harris, right? And then they got Jake Mayer, but Jake Mayer did not do so great this last season. So Jake Mayer, right? 2 starts, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So just flat all the way. Not much of a rushing threat there, although he didn't get a ton of chance. But Jake Mayer has shown in the past that he can be good. Keep in mind, he had, oh my goodness, my writing is so small, 3,800 passing yards and 22 passing touchdowns in 2024. So, he can if he needs to. Yeah. Let's see. Sorry. And I'm working off some outdated depth charts here because unlike the NFL, the CFL doesn't have a bunch of private companies producing them depth charts at all time, right? Like they don't have an Hour Lads or anything else. They more have they have RotoWire, but RotoWire charges, and I'm not about to go and pay a monthly subscription just to have access to depth charts. So no, thank you. All right, let's look at Trevor Harris's stats here. Trevor Harris, 2025 stats. And if you guys don't know where to find good CFL stats, right? Like here in the States, it's kind of hard to find good CFL stats sometimes, but the easiest way to do it, boom, Football Database. Football Database is basically Pro Football Reference, but where Pro Football Reference provides only for like NFL and college, Football Database actually does really well for the CFL and keeps track of all that. Also, if you're looking at other spring leagues like the UFL or how they did in the USFL, XFL, whatever, right? They don't go down to the IFL just yet, sadly, but that would be a completely different set of stats anyways. All right. I just want to see his stats, bro, like his cumulative stats. Okay, so Trevor Harris, right? 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, right? That might not seem amazing, but for the CFL, that's really, really good, right? 4,500 yards. Good God. Yeah, he did just fine. So safe to say Saskatchewan is not going to be in the market for a quarterback. And I think it's Tommy Stevens. They just re-signed as well. Not much of a rushing threat, right? But that doesn't matter when you pass like he does. So let's keep it going here. We said that. Okay. So QB settled. QB settled here. Right? These guys got like freaking Hall of Famers as their quarterbacks. Okay. Quarterback settled there. Is that Dustin Vaughn? Who is Dustin Vaughn? No, not Dustin Vaughn. Sad. Dustin Vaughn is an old guy. He's almost as old as I am. All right. Oh, actually, he's older than I am. All right. And then a bit of an interesting piece here is, of course, Toronto, right? Toronto, previously dominant team, and what you're looking at is just my printouts here, the latest depth charts I can find and stuff like that. So the Toronto Argonauts are going to be a bit of an interesting look here, right? Obviously, they got Chad Kelly, but an injury kept him out most of 2025. They got Nick Arbuckle, who's been a solid-ish, right? CFL quarterback his entire time, right? Established veteran there. And I mean, he didn't do bad in 2025. Nick Arbuckle went 26 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Those are very good numbers for the CFL. That's what you're looking for. And so I'm going to go ahead and say with Arbuckle and Max Duggan, they got quarterback solved. So we're going to throw our teams that have the quarterback solved. We're going to put them off over here to the side. All right. And so just right off the bat, we're going to put Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, Hamilton, and Toronto. We're going to put them off to the side. Why are we putting them off to the side? Because we're discussing quarterbacks, and they don't really need quarterbacks right now. So that leaves us with two teams, right? Make sure I got this right. My dang Lions depth chart is stuck on the back there. And of course, Nathan Rourke has had his struggles, right, since coming back to the CFL, but we're going to put them down there too, right? So you really only have two teams or so, right? Oh, my goodness. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so out of your 9 teams here, you only got a couple that are really looking for quarterbacks. No, my stuff's falling. Okay. Sorry, we're just doing some quick searches. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, part of this is going to be really informal, guys, but I really only have 2 teams looking that are going to be heavy looking for quarterbacks, or at least that need starters, right? So you have Davis Alexander for the Alouettes, and then you have Drew Brown for the Red Blacks, right? Now, if you're looking for a starter, it's good that there's only 2 teams because you really only got a couple of real starters out here, right? So you got Dustin Crum, who probably can be a starter. You got Jake Mayer, who might be able to be a starter. And then you got a couple of guys like McLeod Bethel Thompson and Chris Streveler, right? Of course, you got like guys that have done good in the past. You got guys like Masoli. You got guys like Shea Patterson, right? So there are other guys out there that you could take lottery swings at and hope they hit. But in general, right, you have 2 real potential starters out there. And, actually you have 1 real potential starter. 1 guy that you can say, this guy will probably be a good top-tier starter. And so I expect there to be a good amount of competition between the Alouettes and Red Blacks for Dustin Crum. Of course, the Red Blacks should have the advantage here unless they've somehow screwed up the relationship because Dustin Crum's been there for a little while, right? And the mobility from Dustin Crum is going to be something that sets him apart from some of these other quarterbacks, right? Because traditionally, if you're looking for a passer, right, you'd be looking for a guy like McLeod Bethel Thompson, who's basically the Joe Flacco of the CFL. But McLeod Bethel Thompson is just even on his touchdown and interception ratio, right? He is floor, and that's where he's at. And that's fine, right? for a team that needs that. But these two teams, the Alouettes and the Red Blacks, already have floor, right? They already have a 14 to 10 guy, and then they've already got in Davis Alexander, and then a 10 to 3 guy in a 10 to 3 guy in Davis Alexander, and then a 14 to 10 guy in Drew Brown. So they've already got floor. They've already got somebody who's better than McLeod Bethel Thompson. So if you're competing for a starter, right? If you're a team going out and looking to sign a starter, Dustin Crum is where it's at, and there's pretty much nobody else. Maybe Trey Ford, right? Maybe you think that you're the team that can get him, and that's fair. Maybe that you think that you're the team that can get something out of him. All right. And then let's head over to the running backs. All right. And the good thing about running backs is you really can't ever have enough of them, right? So I expect most of the teams in the league to be in some level of competition to try to get their hands on some of these running backs, because let's just look at who's out there, right? It's a pretty good group. So I kind of organize these guys by the number of starts they have. And so your two best guys are AJ Ouellette from Saskatchewan, right? And Greg Bell from Hamilton, right? These are your two best guys. William Stanback is going to round out the top of the group, all right? Ouellette with 1,200 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns to go with 250 receiving yards and a touchdown, right? So closing in on 1,500 total yards, 9 touchdowns. That is a really good season. And then, like, right up there with him is Greg Bell out of Hamilton, right? Greg Bell in just 14 starts, 1,038 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns to go with 426 receiving yards and another touchdown, right? So that's the definition of a dual threat back. And so you got AJ Ouellette closing in on 1,500 scrimmage yards and 9 touchdowns. You got Greg Bell closing in on 1,500 scrimmage yards and 6 touchdowns. And then you have Stanback. He's not bad, right? He's a little older than the other guys at 31. 17 starts, 698 rushing yards, 4 rushing touchdowns, 278 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. So what sets these guys at the top of the pack is not only that they are so far away from the rest of the free agents in terms of their rushing production, but also the fact that they have a good amount of receiving production to go with it as well. And, of course, William Stanback, big guy, right? 6 foot, 231. That is a huge frame. This is a hard guy to stop. We've seen a couple of years back, I think it was in the Grey Cup, but we've seen a couple of years back how guys like Brady Olvera can just run over guys. And William Stanback is another one of those guys. He's just really, really large. The other two guys, Ouellette and Greg Bell, they're not quite as beefy, right? They're not small by any stretch of the imagination. AJ Ouellette still 5'10", 210. And then Greg Bell still 6 foot 200, right? So these guys are NFL-sized running backs, but they're just not quite the massive body frame that William Stanback is, right? All these guys have been on the older side for running backs about when running backs start to see their production dip, right? The youngest of these 3 guys, Greg Bell, is going to be 27, while Ouellette and Stanback have both eclipsed 30. Other than that, you really don't have a ton out there in the running back market, right? You got Sean Thomas Erlington. He's 33 years old. And he's coming off a year where he only saw himself get 386 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 68 receiving yards, and another touchdown to go with it. Now, that's not a terrible season, but if you're looking for a running back out there, I mean, I would expect all 9 teams to be making calls on running backs. And then, and keep in mind, right, this isn't just going to be a huge booming CFL free agency. There's still guys out there, but these are just the guys that are left, right? There's still some awesome free agents out there, and I'm excited to see where these guys sign, but these are just the dudes that are left, right? These, a lot of these guys aren't the top of the market, aren't the cream of the crop, because so many teams just, signed back all their guys. Let's head on down to the wide receivers. We only got one fullback, that's Jacob Plamondon, who didn't record any stats in the 2025 season. So let's move on a little bit. So when I'm looking at these wide receivers, I organize these guys by receptions. And that doesn't necessarily put the best guys at the top of the list, right? Because when you're looking at receptions, right, you can have a guy with 72 receptions like Braylon Addison, but he managed less per catch than the other guys. And so you got the guy right behind him with, 7 less interceptions, but 200 more yards. All right. So let's look at some of this, right? Like running backs, every team's going to need multiple wide receivers. So I expect most teams to be calling around on some of these guys, right? And what I noticed, right, is you kind of got to get a little ways down the list before you start seeing a bunch of big guys. Your only really big-bodied guy at wide receiver in the top 8 on this list is going to be Dominique Rhymes, right, sitting there at 6'4", 215. And so I expect him to be a little extra coveted of a target because big wide receivers are not uncommon in the CFL, right? But there's not enough teams with enough guys at big body wide receiver right now. And I say wide receiver, I'm sorry, my background's in the NFL, but the tight end's not really utilized in the CFL, so there's no need to, if there's no tight end, there's no need to call a receiver a wide receiver. So these are just receivers. But either way, right? So Dominique Rhymes is somebody I expect to get a little more attention than some of these other guys, even though some of these other guys outproduced him. He's near the top of the free agent list in terms of how he's produced over his times, right? 886 yards and 6 touchdowns. But also, he's big, right? 6'4", 215, as we just talked about. And if you're looking at the yards per catch, none of the other free agents have a higher yards per catch than he does, right? So he's sitting there at almost 18 yards per catch, right? And if you think first downs are important in the NFL, they're extra important in the CFL because you only got 3 downs to make it. So if you have a guy who's averaging almost 2 first downs per catch, right, that is a guy you want on your team. And so, a little lower in yards per game than some of these other guys, right? Played 17 games, 52 yards per game. That's behind guys like Addison and Myers and things like that. So let's talk about some of these other guys, right? Braylon Addison, he's a guy that's been around for a long time, 32 years old, but guess what? He's still producing. Led the free agent class in receptions last year with 72, 825 yards, so he is no slouch at all. 3 receiving touchdowns, but his yards per catch is lower than some of these other guys, right? Just under 12 yards per catch, but 58 yards per game. So still very productive, right? Over the 14 games he played, right? Still a very healthy, nearly 60 yards per game, right? Didn't see that production in touchdowns like we would want, but I expect a number of teams to go after Braylon Addison as their second or third option at wide receiver. Dante Myers, free agent from the Saskatchewan Roughriders. He goes 5'11", 186. So kind of a smaller guy, and I say small relatively speaking because, if you want to know what small is, I'm small. I'm 5'6". I'm like 160 pounds, right? So not large by any stretch of the imagination. So when we're saying small in football terms, not necessarily small human beings, right? If you saw a guy that was 5'11" and was almost, 200 pounds, that would look like a pretty large individual generally. Dante Myers, he was actually released by Saskatchewan, so he could actually be signed anytime. So there's a chance that teams have already been talking with him, right? And unlike some of these other guys, he's a bit on the younger side, which is good, right? When you're looking for players to sign to a multi-year deal, you want to look for younger players. And so Dante Myers being 25, that's going to help him out in this free agency market. Not to mention, he is the top producer in the free agent market in terms of yards with 65 receptions, 1,056 yards, 16.25 yards per carry, and of course, a nice, healthy 8 receiving touchdowns to go with it, right? He's also the top producer in terms of yards per game with 70.4 yards per game. Can you imagine, right? So didn't even play a full 18 game slate, and yet he's still the top producer there. Next up, we got Curly Gittens Jr., 5'11", 191, free agent from the Edmonton Elks, right? If you're the Edmonton Elks, you need to be focused on re-signing guys. And I'm going to go to the CFL tracker here, right? Because if you go and look, CFL keeps a list of all their free agent trackers, and so you can see kind of who's been re-signed and whatnot. And the reason I want to look at this is because there's a ton of guys who got re-signed before the negotiating period could even start because they didn't want to risk losing their guys. So with all these guys that have gotten re-signed, it kind of tamps down the excitement just a little bit for the free agency period here. But of the free agent wide receivers they had, right? Of course, they went all in on Cody Fajardo, right? They extended him back in December, but they didn't re-sign a single one of their pending free agent wide receivers. And so that's something you should be doing. If you're making this big decision, you're like, we're out on Trey Ford, right? Cody Fajardo is the future. That's fine. But you got to put weapons around him. And that's not to say they have nothing, right? If I can find my depth chart here. Sorry. That's not to say they have nothing, but if you're Edmonton and you're committing to this path at quarterback, you need to be re-signing guys like Curly Gittens Jr., right? So they got, I think it's a Darius Victor here, right? They only got 2 wide receivers. Only had 2 wide receivers active for their last game. That's not the way to do it. Sorry, just looking. Alphabetical rosters. Oh, Benjamin Victor, right? So a guy who's made his way around some of these leagues, right? So he's a good wide receiver, but re-signing a guy like Curly Gittens would be very important. And there's a chance that Gittens doesn't want to re-sign, but for a guy, that's bordering on 6 foot, still in his 20s, right? 777 yards, 4 touchdowns, right? That's production that you would like to have with Cody Fajardo. And then we get, so then we get to Charleston Rambo, and something has happened. I have hit a time warp somewhere in my life because I could swear upon my great grandmother's grave that Charleston Rambo is like 35 years old. He has to be older than me because I remember this guy, right? I remember his name being around forever, and yet he's 26 years old. Like when I was making this free agent guide, right? And if you want this free agent guide to where you can basically keep tabs on everyone who's doing anything, right? You can put their new team right here, right? It's got a space where you can put their 2026 team, and it's pretty short, right? Only a couple of pages here. Print that out, and you can keep track of the CFL free agents and where they're going right along with me. But Charleston Rambo, when I was making this, I could have sworn that I put his wrong age in there. I was like, 26, that's not his right age, but apparently it is, right? So Charleston Rambo, a guy who's probably only going to get better the more experience he has in the league, right? Seems like he's been around forever. But of course, I grew up in Oklahoma, so I grew up hearing about Charleston Rambo, so maybe that's what it is, right? Not grew up hearing about Charleston Rambo. Actually, in the fullness of my adulthood, I heard about Charleston Rambo way back in 2017, but it seems like a long time, right? So he's even still got room to grow. And for Charleston Rambo, he's not a guy who averaged a ton of yards per catch, but he was very solid, right? 54 receptions, 585 yards, 3 touchdowns. Across a 17-game slate, he averaged about 45 yards per game, right? And so this puts him, for me, right, a little bit above some of these other wide receivers, right? Because he's still got a bit of room to grow. He's not in his 30s like some of these guys. And there's other guys that we'll talk about in a minute, guys like Jareth Stearns, who I feel similarly about, right? So some of these younger guys who are in their mid-20s, right? You got to remember, they've been in the CFL at most for 2 years, right? And so what happens is it's such a transition from the 4-down game to the 3-down game that it takes some of these wide receivers time to, get used to that. But the more these guys like Charleston Rambo and like Jareth Stearns get used to that, the better they're going to be. So when they hit their next free agent payday as one of these 30-year-old guys, right, maybe they'll get paid really big. And if I'm a team looking for a wide receiver, like a number 2 option, number 3 option, I'm willing to pay a decent amount of money to a Charleston Rambo. I'm willing to pay a decent amount of money to a Jareth Stearns, not for what they are right now, but for what they can become later, right? So David Unger, 30-year-old wide receiver. Oh, also Charleston Rambo, 6'1", so a little bigger than some of these other receivers. David Unger, right, 53 receptions, 653 yards. We already talked about Dominique Grimes. Jareth Stearns, we talked about a little bit, 48 receptions, 530 yards. But here's the other guy that I expect to get a ton of attention in free agency. And the reason he's a little bit down on the list is because he has less receptions than some of these other guys. But make no mistake, this guy played an 18-game slate, 45 receptions, 863 yards. And I think earlier I said that Dante Myers, if you guys hear that in the background, don't worry, that's just my daughter. She got a big Paw Patroller for Christmas, right? Big Paw Patrol truck. It's amazing. It's really dope, and it plays music. So, yeah, she's going to be playing with that in the background, which is fine. All right, because we're keeping it cool here. So, Aiden Eberhardt, another one of those big-bodied wide receivers, and he's, he's a guy who produced a bit more than some of these other guys, but I think earlier I said that Dante Myers out of the free agent class was the top producer in terms of yards per catch. And he was the top producer in terms of yards per catch. And I was incorrect because actually Aiden Eberhardt is. And, yep. Be right back. Love you. Love you. All right, we're back. I just stick the Paw Patroller in her room. All right, so anyways, Dante Myers, Aiden Eberhardt, 2 larger body guys that are really produced well last year, and I expect them to get a ton of attention in this free agency period, right? We talked about the younger guys, Charleston Rambo, Jareth Stearns. Now, while they're both of a similar age and similar production, body-wise, they couldn't be more different. Charleston Rambo, right, is 6 foot, bordering on 200 pounds, where Jareth Stearns is like 5'8", right, so a little bit closer to me. Then you got some veterans behind them, right? You have a really good free agent class of wide receivers. You got Stephen Dunbar, who's played for quite a while. In 10 games, he had 511 yards. Carrick Wheatball, another one of these younger guys. Tommy Neal, another one of these younger guys, both eclipsed 500 yards this year, right? And I'm kind of moving through these quick because I want to get on to the. Sorry, I want to get on to the. What did I do here? I messed up something. I need to go. Sorry. So, technical difficulties. I've messed DeVaris Daniels stats here. All right. Looking. All right, here we go. So I messed up DeVar Daniel's stats. I was looking and I had put down that he had 10 receptions for 408 yards, which of course would give him quite the radical, uh, quite the radical 40.8 yards per catch, which that is receptions, right? So 40.8 yards per game for him. And this is just a really good free agent crop of wide receivers for the CFL. I mean, you have your 1,000-yard guy, yes, in Dante Myers, but you also have quite a few guys that are, you got a couple of guys that are hitting the 800-yard range. You got a few guys hitting the 400 to 500-yard range. And I moved through these pretty quick because I want to get onto these tight ends, right? So, oh, not tight ends. Gets onto some of these. And PFF, I just want to rant real quick. PFF kind of bothers me a little bit. And the reason PFF bothers me is because they do grading and they do numbers for all of these offensive linemen in the CFL, but they don't actually post those numbers. They just pretend that these guys aren't playing football at all. And that kind of bugs me. So for guys like, for some of these big free agents like Jamar McGloster, like Landon Rice, people like that, all we have is the number of games they started to go by, right? And so unless you're going to go and sift through every single article, basically all you can see is how many games they started. And so your top game starter is Coulter Woodmansey from Hamilton, right? 18 game starter. Him and David Foucault are the only 18 game starters on this list, right? But you got a number of other guys who not only are very large, right? And that's basically what I got to go off of because I'm not super familiar with all the offensive linemen from the CFL, right? Got a hair in here. The curses of having long hair, right? But you got Jamar McGloster, Landon Rice, those guys, 14, 16 game starters. Ruby and Starzala, 14 and 10. Bordner, Murray, they've started their fair share of games. Coulter Woodmansey, we said he started 18. Sean McEwen, 17 game starter. Josh Coker, 15 game starter. And then you got a nice run of guys here to round out the list. Gregor McKellar, Jarrell Broxton, David Foucault, and Andrew Pearson, all starting 5 or more games, right? So let's go to these defensive linemen. These defensive linemen, some of these guys are going to be fun, right? And we didn't have pressure numbers or anything like that, but still we got it here. And I got TSN pulled up right over here on my TV. Very exciting, right? So you have a couple of guys, right? You have, let's check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 guys that have 5 or more sacks on the year. And only only 2 of those guys actually played a full 18-game slate here. And so I just want to look at some of these, right? Probably the most intriguing, right? You do have like veterans like Malik Carney and Brian Cox, right? But probably the most intriguing to me is, that's telling me that it's about to be CFL free agency time, all right? See, I even set an alarm on my phone and everything. This is my entire Sunday, all right? So probably the most intriguing to me is Habakkuk Baldonado, right? Habakkuk Baldonado was a guy I really liked coming out of the draft, right? He showed a lot of twitch in college as an edge rusher. And so 6'4", 251, right? I don't remember what his 40 time was, but I feel like it was good, right? I did his draft profile a few years back. But still just 26 years old, right? So still even a bit of room to grow there. Getting used to the wider field a little bit, I'm sure, is a process that takes time. But 5 sacks, 18 tackles, right? And so, like we said about the wide receiver class, this is a decent class of defensive linemen too. And it's kind of hard to differentiate on these guys who's an edge rusher and who's an interior defensive lineman, because when you look through the free agent tracker, they don't actually differentiate. But just by the sizes, you can probably tell, in general, who plays outside. Like Malik Carney, 6'3", 245. That's the profile of a guy that plays on the outside. Now, Jalen Hutchings, a guy who had 8 sacks, 6'3", 304. That's definitely an interior defensive lineman profile, right? And so 8 sacks from an interior defensive lineman, that's huge, right? But unfortunately, Jalen Hutchings, he probably would be the top defensive tackle on the market this year. But he was so top of the market that he got an NFL deal instead, right? So he was released from Calgary. That's how he got made available. And the Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings of the National Football League, went and picked him up. So unfortunately, he's not going to be available. But keep in mind, after we get to the draft, right? After free agency, after we get to the draft, if they're like, well, I don't know if we're going to have room, right? Jalen Hutchings might become available, and it still might be before the CFL season actually starts. So that's something to watch out for, Jalen Hutchings, right? If the Vikings decide, yes, that he's good, but he's not going to make the final roster, that is going to be a huge addition for some CFL roster and possibly May, right? James Vaughters, 6'2", Brian Cox. Brian Cox, 6'3", 270, right? 6 sacks, 24 tackles. He is a guy at 6'3", 270. He could play inside or outside, right? So typically once you hit that high 260, 270 range, that gives you a lot of versatility on where you can play. And that's really good because more and more teams are looking for those versatile guys. James Vaughters, right? 6'2", 255. That's definitely an edge rusher profile. 6 sacks, 36 tackles. We already talked about Habakkuk Baldonado. Shane Ray, he's been in the league a long time. He's had a few stints in the NFL, too, where he's done very well. He's 32, right? So this is probably one of his last big contracts before he sails off into the sunset. But 13 games, 5 sacks, 14 tackles. So still, putting on a show here in the CFL, looking for at least one last big contract, maybe more, right? If he gets a 1-year contract this year, right? Who knows? He might continue to have more contracts. Mike Rose, don't get him confused with Mike Rose, the linebacker from the UFL, right? Mike Rose, the defensive lineman, 6'2", 268, outside guy, 33 years old, 5 sacks, 16 tackles, right? And then after that, you get into your 4-3 sack guys, right? And so it's hard to know how those guys are going to project, right? Some of these guys could take off and become 10 sack guys next year, or they could completely flatten out and become bench players for the rest of their time in the league. You never know. Your linebackers, right? We rank them on our list by total tackles. So your linebacker at the top of the list is not going to be necessarily your most productive linebacker. But the guy I'm looking at right now who would look like the top producer for me out of this free agent class, there's 2 of them, right? So there's A.J. Allen, who's still just 27 years old, right? And so last year, he was really producing in multiple facets of the game. 3 interceptions, 4 sacks, 88 tackles. That is a guy that's solid all around. He's 6'1", 210, so he almost has like a safety type build playing linebacker. But 27, he's still got multiple years left. You can feel comfortable signing this guy to a multi-year contract, and it's not going to give you any problems at all. My second best producer out of this class would be Wynton McManus, much more of a veteran, right? 6', 220, much more of a traditional linebacker build, right? But also he's 31 years old. In 13 games, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks, tied for the lead amongst free agent linebackers here, and 62 tackles. And then finally, our final top producer, Jacob Roberts, wasn't overly turnover guy in the passing game, right? No interceptions, but over an 18-game slate, 4 sacks, 93 tackles, so he can definitely be disruptive. He's one of the bigger guys in this class at 6'1", 233. And other than like Josh Woods and Davion Taylor each registering a sack, these are the only linebackers that registered sacks out of this free agent class. Oh, wait, we got one more. We got Jonathan Jones. I wanted to flip back because there's a guy I wanted to talk about, and I forgot. Anthony Lanier, right? Anthony Lanier, 32-year-old guy, right, has definitely been around. He was with the Argos last year, but 6'6", 285. 6'6", 285 is the ultimate tweener profile body type for a defensive end, right? Because this is a guy who can definitely play inside, right? He's 285. He's got the beef to play inside, but he's 6'6". He has the length to play outside if he needs to. And so I don't know if you guys have ever seen a 6'6", 285 guy in person, but 285, nearly 300 pounds, seems like it would be a hefty fella. This is not a fat guy, right? When you were 6'6", this looks like a lean, muscular 285, right? And Anthony Lanier, of course, I know a little bit about him because former Kansas City Chief, right? And so he's a guy who'd been around with Washington, right? I think he had 5 sacks there, and he's a guy I had a lot of high hopes for coming into Kansas City. He just didn't quite get it, but that size makes him relevant anytime he is on the field. And then finally, let's go to the defensive backs, right? Again, when you're doing the CFL tracker, it doesn't necessarily differentiate between types of defensive backs, but some of these guys are going to be half-field corners. Some of these guys are going to be corners. Some of these guys are going to be half-field safeties, right? But there's not a ton of doubt that amongst these defensive backs, the 2 top guys are going to be Marc-Antoine Decoy, who goes 6'3", 198, so almost linebacker size in how he plays. An interception, 34 tackles, but 3 sacks to go along with that. Now, in the NFL, you see them transitioning to these hybrid safety types that come in and make big hits and get sacks. You can blitz them from anywhere, right? Marc-Antoine Decoy is exactly that kind of person. In fact, if the Chiefs were to say, we want Marc-Antoine Decoy to come and sign a futures deal for us, I would be thrilled about that, right? He's got the body type for it and everything else. And then finally, you have also you have Deshaun Amos, right? Through an 18-game slate, 4 interceptions, 45 tackles, no sacks, but that's fine, right? And then so Deshaun Amos definitely we're going to take the ball away type of safety. I want to talk about another defensive back that's of a different type, and that's Brendan Dozier. 5'11", 201, built like a running back, right? No interceptions, 45 tackles, but 5 sacks. 5 sacks as a DB, that is really something that you need to be looking at. And I know these teams are going to be looking for guys that turn the ball over, guys that get these takeaways, things like that. And they should. But they should also be looking at these guys who are making the game-changing plays like sacks, right? Because those are impact plays. Also look at, if you are a team that's, missing out on the top of the safety market, on the top of the defensive back market, and you're like, oh, man, who should we get? A guy like Deontay Ruffin might be good. 5'10", 177, still just 27 years old, and through 8 games, right? They didn't have any interceptions. He didn't have any sacks. He only had 12 tackles. But in 2024, this guy was a turnover machine with 5 takeaways. All right. So I'm just going to real quick here. Sorry. Oh, this thing. It's kind of an old computer, so give me just a second here. All right, wait for that to load. But anyways, so we've gone through all the positions here, and free agency is about to affect effectively start any minute now, right? As the legal tampering period starts out after 11 p.m. Central Time, which is where I'm at, right? So 4 minutes away. And I want to, oh, yep, I want to click that one. Click it. Oh, this thing is being ridiculous. All right, share that tab. Okay, so before we get full, I'm going to head off and go to the restroom, get something to eat real fast. I'll be back in about 4 minutes for the start of this free agency period. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going on X, formerly Twitter, right? Threads, wherever we feel like we need to go, the CFL websites, and we're going to be chasing down who's signing where so that we can keep track of that all on the 2026 Fan Blitz Network CFL Free Agent Tracker, right? And so if you want that, you can go to fanblitznetwork.weebly.com. If you go on my profile on Blue Sky, it's there. But we have a downloadable version where you can print out your own version. You can keep track of who's still available, what team each guy is going to, so you can follow along with us. I'll be right back. Back. Okay, we got food, we got drink. We are about to have a heck of a time because CFL Free Agency is about to kick off. So I'm your host, Matt Sparks from the Fan Blitz Network, and I'm excited. All right, so I'm going to be keeping the handy dandy phone here the whole time, and we are going to be checking out the insiders here. We're also keeping an eye on TSN over on this screen as the CFL legal negotiating period has officially started. So very, very excited. So there is going to be times, right? Just keeping Sports Center over here on this other one. There is going to be times where we're going through, and if you guys are trying to keep up, we have the Fan Blitz Network free agent guide right here, right? If you go on fanblitznetwork.weebly.com, we have a whole downloadable version there, and it even has a space where you can keep track of each free agent as they sign. And basically, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to try my very best to keep up with all of these signings, right? Of course, some of these will be posted up on TSN. Some of these will be posted up on Twitter, whatever, and that's what we're going to do. All right. Farhanlology is probably and Dave Naylor are probably the two best. So we're going to head over to X right now, Twitter, whatever, right? I like to call it Twitter, right? It's still Twitter in my heart. So they're talking about hockey on TSN, sadly. Like, do they not even care? That's rude. They gave a little segment to it, and that's about it. All right, Farhanlology. All right, so we're over here. Okay, so we do have our first signing, AJ Ouellette, running back. He has been extended just before the deadline, just right prior to the deadline in Saskatchewan. So for AJ Ouellette, right, one of the top two running backs available in this free agent class, the top producing running back available in this free agent class, 1,200 yards rushing, 8 rushing touchdowns, 250 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown, right? So AJ Ouellette has been extended by the Saskatchewan Roughriders. All right, let's keep going. And they're just talking about Canucks hockey, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. Let's head over to Dave Naylor, see what he's got. Following him on X as well. This is the first time I've used X in forever. CFL, you need to get your people. TSN, you need to get your people on Blue Sky. Like, what the heck are we doing? Come on, right? It is the year of our Lord, whichever Lord or lady or whoever that you worship, or none at all. It doesn't matter, right? You got to live your life. You got to live your religion. You got to find your truth. But whatever you worship, whoever you worship, freaking in the year of our worship, 2026, TSN needs to have their people on something else other than the Elon Musk pedophile site here. All right. So, man, Dave Naylor retweeting NFL stuff. Come on now. You're not that guy. All right. Defensive lineman, Mike Rose, Saskatchewan Roughriders. 1 second. Had to open up some juices for my baby. All right. So, Mike Rose also extended. All right. So, Saskatchewan getting started early here. 2 of the top free agents we can officially put down as signed. Okay. Looks like he actually got signed a little bit ago. And the CFL tracker did not keep up with it. Right. Okay, Dave Naylor reporting a couple days back. There will be a market for Trey Ford to try and reset his career as a CFL backup. I expect British Columbia, Montreal, and Hamilton to be among the teams to engage. Ottawa and just signed a punter. And James Burnip. What a name. All right, Javon Santos Knox, of course, got released. Blah, blah, blah. Come on, the tampering window is open. Give us some news. Okay, come on. We have CFL Free Agency going on, the top football league outside of the United States, and we cannot get one single mention of it on TSN. Come on now. Boo. All right. So we're just gonna keep up with it, right? That's fine. We'll just run back through some of these free agents, right? Top of the quarterback market, Dustin Crumb's really the only real potential starter out there, right? Maybe other guys that have done good in the past, like Shea Patterson. If you were keeping up with us just now, AJ Ouellette re-signing with the Saskatchewan Roughriders about an hour ago. And so the top running back on the market, quite possibly, no longer on the market, which makes William Stanback and Greg Bell as your top two running backs left on the market before it drops off precipitously. I'm looking to see where some of these wide receivers go because you have a ton of top tier wide receivers on the market, guys like Dante Myers, guys like Dominique Rhymes. This is going to be very fun, right? So stay with us and we will get you the news as it comes available. Let's see who else we got. Okay. Justin Dunk, JC Abbott. Let's find him. JC Abbott. Okay. If you guys don't know who JC Abbott and Justin Dunk are, they are from 3 Down Nation. All right. So we're going to follow him real quick. And we're already following 3 Down Nation. Justin Dunk. Let's get him followed. Right. So very exciting here. Saskatchewan expresses mild interest in re-signing Habakkuk Baldonado, right? He was one of the guys we talked earlier. He's still got a lot of potential left to show, and apparently Saskatchewan agrees. But not enough to re-sign him just yet. So we're keeping up with it. JC Abbott, give us something. Come on. Nothing. All right. So we're basically just going to keep a watch on these guys. Abbott, Dunk, right? Lulgy. Justin Dunk. What a cool name, by the way. Justin Dunk. Give us some news, bro. Somebody hopped on there on Justin Dunk's post, and they were like, "No signings to announce yet. This is boring." So here's my thing. I don't know how I'm going to do NFL free agency this year because I'm not much of a user of Twitter anymore. I guess I'm going to have to go on Twitter to get Ari Mirov's signings and whatnot, which is going to suck. Going to have to get Ian Rappaport's, which is going to suck. All right, so it's all going to suck. But we got to live life. Very, very exciting time, right? And if you're watching and you find out that you like CFL free agency, well, NFL free agency starts in a month and a few days. So this is a fun time. Roster building is always great, right? Saskatchewan with 2 big re-signings, early defensive lineman Mike Rose, running back AJ Ouellette, and we are following all the Twitter accounts here: Justin Dunk, JC Abbott, Farhan Lalji, and Dave Naylor to find out who is signing where and when. Right, in this CFL free agency. Now, this is a little bit different from NFL free agency because there's only about 150 total free agents here, and not all of them are great, but some of these guys are really good team-changing guys. So I'm excited to see who goes where. All right. Lalji still has not tweeted out anything new yet, so let's head over to Dave Naylor. And I'm just going to keep them on my list here so that I have everybody all in one place. TSN, Dave Naylor. Okay. And they're not putting out contracts on these guys. All they said was Mike Rose got signed to a 1-year contract. So, what? Come on, you kidding me? So they put a video in there, but they didn't actually put the video in there. So yeah, okay, whatever. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait for them to tweet. JC Abbott. Oh. Wild. Okay, JC Abbott, let's go. New free agent rankings. Saskatchewan expected to make the kicking position an open job. Yeah, isn't that everybody? All of our jobs are open. Negotiation window open, but still nothing. Right, so the only news we've gotten so far is the re-signings that happened before the negotiating window even opened from Saskatchewan. So we still have every single one of our top free agents available, right? So, well, except AJ Ouellette. Top free agent quarterbacks going to be Dustin Crum, Trey Ford, Jake Meyer, and McLeod Bethel Thompson, right? Those are your four mostly could be possibly game-changing guys. As far as running backs, your only game-changing guys are William Stanbeck and Greg Bell. Everybody else is a role player or worse. At receiver, we still have every top wide receiver available, and it starts out with Dante Myers, small-bodied guy, Dominique Grimes, big-bodied guy, Aiden Eberhardt, big-bodied guy, right? And so you only have one guy that eclipsed 1,000 yards, but you got a few more who have eclipsed 800 yards and have just really produced really well, right? And then, of course, you got the veteran Braylon Addison. Your top free agents remaining. Oh, look, Sean Bain, too. Sean Bain, I forgot. Sean Bain hasn't been super productive recently, but in 2023, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's not bad, right? You still have all of your free agent offensive linemen available, most of your free agent defensive linemen available, with the exception of Mike Rose, who re-signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Other guys that the Saskatchewan Roughriders could re-sign, Habakkuk Baldonado, they just expressed interest in re-signing him just recently, and Shane Ray, who had 5 sacks and 14 tackles. A bit of a legend in the CFL, I would say. I don't know. So, I don't know that much about the CFL. But let's check JC Abbott. Come on. JC Roger Rabbit. Come on. You son of a gun. Nothing there. Let's head over to Justin Dunk to see any new transactions, right? And so who I just need like an Ari Mirov for the CFL. But instead, we got about 4 that we're following, and nothing new from Dunk yet. So we're going to head over to Farnology. And if it gets boring, I'm sorry, but that's how free agency is. It would be less boring if you had the official Fan Blitz Network 2026 CFL Free Agent Guide, where you can keep track of all the free agents with us. And when I'm talking about these top free agents, you can sit there and point to them and say, oh, okay, there's a free agent. All right, so, whoever your team is, right, there's still plenty of guys out there. We talked about the only 2 teams in need of a starter at quarterback, or possibly in need of a starter at quarterback. Montreal, the Alouettes, right, who have Davis Alexander coming off a pretty good year with 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And then the Ottawa Red Blacks with Drew Brown coming off 14 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, right? Either one of them could be looking at the one real starter in the market, and that's Dustin Crum. Then I imagine you're going to have a handful of teams trying to fight over these 2 remaining running backs, William Stanbeck and Greg Bell. I'm going to get interest from another number of teams, as are the vast collection of wide receivers here, right? So when I'm looking, I expect Hamilton to be heavily involved And looking for wide receivers. Saskatchewan, not as much, but they could still use like a number 3 guy. Calgary, of course, they traded for Vernon Adams, and if you trade for a quarterback, you want wide receivers to go with them. Their last game, they only had 2 wide receivers active, and Mario Alford is no longer active because he is a free agent, so I expect them to be heavily involved in the wide receiver market. And I have to get used to the new terminology of the CFL. Halfback in the NFL means a running back. Halfback in the CFL means a safety, right? So, let's see. Gary Peters. That's fun. Of course, the British Columbia Lions, right? Why they felt comfortable trading away Vernon Adams is because they have Nathan Rourke, right? Nathan Rourke, the CFL quarterback, so good he made it to the NFL. Of course, they lost, or not lost yet, but take a chance of losing Eberhardt in free agency this year. So I'm sure Eberhardt is the guy the Lions would really like to re-sign, but he's also a guy that every CFL team should be looking at, right? And I'm really having a good time here. I tell you what. This is just like NFL free agency, only I would say it's just like NFL free agency, only a lot slower, but actually NFL free agency is fairly slow a lot of times too. So, all right. Let's see what Dave Naylor's got for us. Come on, Dave. Don't play with me. Yep, Dave Naylor's got nothing for us. So, here's what we're seeing. If you're like me and you're an NFL free agency hound, right? What you're seeing is that CFL free agency is not quite like NFL free agency, because NFL free agency, even before the legal tampering period starts, they've already been, they've had their agents have dinner with the guy and things like that. And in CFL free agency, that's obviously not the case, because you're not seeing deals come out right now. You actually have general managers from all of the 9 teams on the phone right now talking to free agents, saying, hey, do you want to come to Montreal Alouettes? Do you want to come play for Saskatchewan, right? And so you actually have guys on the phone doing deals right now, as opposed to NFL free agency, where a lot of these deals are already done, and as soon as the tampering period officially begins, they can officially start looking at contracts. But here in the CFL, it looks like they do things by the book, and that's really good. That's why we're not seeing a ton of stuff coming out in the first 10 15 minutes of free agency. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you guys over on the free agency tracker, right? And I'm going to go stretch my legs. I'll be right back in just a couple minutes. All right. So there we are. All right. And we're back. Welcome back. I'm your host, Matt Sparks, and we are looking at CFL free agency. It's a very fun time, and I'm having a hoot. It'll be better once some of these transactions get going, but it's just, it's fine. We're ready. I'm ready to go. And so, if you've been keeping up with us, we have been following the NFL free agency, or CFL free agency, as it goes along. So sorry. And yeah, I'm having a good time. We've been following the key insiders, Farhan Lalji, Justin Dunk, Dave Naylor, Lalji and Naylor, both of TSN, which is the Canadian equivalent of PN, and sorry, which is the Canadian equivalent of ESPN. And we've just been going through there, looking at who signed. Not a ton of news so far. GMs are still negotiating deals with players. We did see earlier this morning AJ Ouellette, running back from Saskatchewan, was re-signed. He was the most productive running back that was about to be on the market, right? And then we also saw Mike Rose get re-signed as well, right? So not a ton of news, but what news there has been fun news. Sorry, just looking at stuff right here. I wonder if I can share that. Cool. All right, so there's that. I got an old computer, kind of a Chromebook type thing. Okay, we're still just seeing CFL rankings here. So in the process, free agents going and whatnot. So let's see. Let's head over to Justin Dunk. Let's see what he's got for us. Over on TSN, we're still seeing hockey. They're still breaking down the hockey games, so that's fine, whatever, but come on. Okay, here we go. You! Let's go, let's go, let's go. We got some stuff. All right, so our first new signing of the day, Jonathan Moxey agrees to terms with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. All right. So, Jonathan Moxey. Just looking through my free agent list here. If you want this free agent list too, you can go on to if you want this free agent list too, you can go on to fanblitznetwork.weebly.com and get that. I believe Jonathan Moxey is a linebacker. Very nice. Yes. All right. So, looking through the free agents here, Jonathan Moxey agrees to terms with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Of course, they can't actually sign any contracts right now. They can't actually sign any contracts for another couple of days, right? Until the 10th. But let's see. Tommy Neild agrees to terms with Winnipeg. Tommy Neild, one of the younger wide receivers on our list here. So let's just pencil in Winnipeg right here. Tommy Neild, 13 games, 535 yards, 5 touchdowns, and one of the bigger bodied wide receivers in this class because he has a 6'3", 203 frame here. And I'm just looking for this fella, Jonathan Moxey. I cannot, I'm old. I don't see very well sometimes. And so that's what happens here. Looking for Jonathan Moxie. There we go. Jonathan Moxie, defensive back from Hamilton. He's headed to Winnipeg, 5'10", 188. And he's one of the top producers in this class. 3 interceptions, 39 tackles. So Winnipeg gets a good defensive back in Jonathan Moxie there. All right, let's keep going because these signings are coming in fast right now. Edmonton Elks agree to terms with defensive lineman Malik Carney. All right, so head over to the defensive lineman. If you want this, it's free on my website right now, fanblitznetwork.weebly.com. Go and get your own. You can print it out, and you can follow along as these signings get made official. Right, so Malik Carney headed to Edmonton. Right, and Edmonton, they really feel like they can get something out of it this year. They've got a top-tier quarterback in Cody Fajardo, right? So they really think the rest of it will come together now that they've got the quarterback, but they got to get that defense going as well. Let's head over to some of the other accounts and see if they have anything that Justin Dunk does not. All right, so this is exciting. This is coming in fast. All right. Okay. So we have contract details on the Malik Carney signing, right? So on the Malik Carney signing, 2-year deal, $270,000 per year. Wouldn't we all like to be making that? So Malik Carney, heck of a deal there, right? He was the top producing defensive lineman in the CFL free agent class this year. 8 sacks, 39 tackles, and he quickly goes over to Edmonton, right? Meanwhile, if you missed the news earlier, Tommy Neal, the hero of the Western Final, has agreed to terms with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, a 2-year deal there. And then Jonathan Moxie has agreed to the deal with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. No contract details on that yet as to the length of the deal or anything like that. So, woo, let's go. It's happening. It's all happening here, guys. All right. Come on. This thing. So we're getting these signings as fast as we can. They're coming in a little faster than I can click through here. We do have contract details on that AJ Ouellette re-signing. That is a 1-year contract extension, which makes a ton of sense. All right, a 1-year contract extension for AJ Ouellette. He produced big with Saskatchewan this last year. And at 30 years old, it makes sense for them to just give him that 1-year extension. Let him get a chance at free agency next year. All right. So we're going to turn on notifications for all of these fellers. Okay, yep. Allow. We need JC Abbott. Okay, notifications. Okay. We need Justin Dunn. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay, Jarrell Broxton, offensive lineman. Jarrell Broxton, offensive lineman, one of the top offensive linemen available, an 16-game starter. Agrees to terms with Winnipeg, going from British Columbia over to Winnipeg. And, I mean, this stuff's coming in fast, guys. Like just super fast as it can possibly happen. And the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are making moves. All right. All right. Cool. And let's turn on notifications for Fire and Logi, and then we should be good. We're ready to go. Woo-woo. Exciting stuff. Wow, Farin doesn't even have the other stuff yet. Two-year deal for Jarrell Broxton. Makes him the highest paid offensive lineman in the CFL at $250,000 per year. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to undo notifications for undo notifications for Adam Schefter. We're going to undo notifications for Ari Mirov. Oh, undo, I said. All right. And awesome. So, should only be getting notifications about CFL Free Agency. Let's go. Very exciting. I'm having a good time. All right. Just a quick intercedence. Those of you who are interested in the UFL, UFL had a event for the Louisville Kings last night with a huge turnout, so that's cool. Yeah. And we're going to sit here and we're going to have some Cheetos. We're going to have some CFL news. We're just going to have a heck of a time all around. It's going to be great. Yeah. Honestly, is there any way you would rather spend a Sunday than learning about free agent deals, right? John Hodge, who's this fellow? Let's find out who John Hodge is. Apparently, he's an insider as well. Google didn't tell me that. Follow. Notifications. So, we have a few deals already. We have Tommy Neild heading to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We have Jarrell Broxton headed to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We have Jonathan Moxey heading to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Bro, I already saw that. Get on my butt, bro. All right, so Foreign Logi are reporting it's a 2-year, $250,000 per year deal for Broxton. Well, that is lovely.
It's raining and we're jumping in muddy puddles.
Woohoo! All right. Exciting, exciting, exciting. I am just having the best time here with CFL Free Agency. We've already seen a number of deals come in. We're going to see a number more here in the next 30 minutes to an hour. So stay with us here or go on TSN. No, just kidding. TSN is talking hockey right now, which is super important to Canadians, but come on. Come on now. Where else are you going to find CFL Free Agency and Jalapeno Cheetos and Monster Import in the same place? Nowhere else. Only the FanBlitz Network, right? I made that logo. All right. So let's get what we got. Justin Dunn, tweet out something. Winnipeg Blue Bombers making moves. They've already gotten themselves a top flight offensive lineman. They've gotten themselves a safety. They've gotten themselves a receiver, right? So they've addressed multiple positions of need. And what we're going to do, I'm going to go in and try to fill that in, all right? Ugh. So, Tommy Neild. All right. And what else? Who else did we say they got? Oh, offensive lineman. So, Broxton. And on the other side, Moxie. And yeah. Elks agreeing to terms with Malik Carney, the top defensive lineman in the entire free agent class with 8 sacks. Exciting stuff. Sorry, trying to find the Elks depth chart here so I can keep it updated. Let's see if we have any news coming out, right? So we had just a whole flurry of signings all there at once. Jonathan Moxley going to Winnipeg. Tommy Neal going to Winnipeg. Jarrell Broxton going to Winnipeg. Then we had Malik Carney, the top defensive lineman, go to the Elks. And then, of course, we had A.J. Ouellette, and we had Mike Rose re-sign earlier, right? So we've had a lot come in all at once. Yeah. So let's see what Lalji has for us. We're going to scroll back down through his Twitter feed. Okay, so Broxton, now the highest paid offensive lineman at $250,000 per in the CFL. Malik Carney going to the Elks, 2-year deal, $270,000 per. Receiver Tommy Neal, 2-year deal with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And defensive back Jonathan Moxley heading to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But no updates on that yet.
Paw Patrol Pod.
Okay, so we'll be right back. I didn't realize that I hadn't unmuted. That's embarrassing. All right. So we've been talking about various things. We've been talking about the deals coming in from free agency right now on the social medias. They're talking about Diego Pavia and whether or not he is a starting CFL quarterback, right? And that's fair to wonder because his size makes him a little small for NFL quarterback, right? So we got a ton of deals coming in all at once. I wonder how long I was muted for. That's really embarrassing. All right. So Aiden Eberhardt, we said we expected him to get a ton of looks in this free agency period, and Dan Ralph reporting that he is indeed getting a ton of looks after becoming a free agent from the British Columbia Lions. Not officially a free agent yet. Of course, that free agency period doesn't actually start until February 10th, but we are 46 minutes into the legal negotiating window for CFL free agents, and Aiden Eberhardt is expected to be one of the top receivers, but he was not the first receiver to come off the board. No. In fact, Tommy Neild, the former Saskatchewan Rough Rider, was the first to come off the board, and he is headed to Winnipeg, right? So, like we said, a guy who was expected to generate some interest in the free agent market, Matthew Schultz, right? He retired this offseason, so he will not be part of this free agency class. AJ Ouellette, who is expected to generate a ton of interest in free agency here, the most productive running back in the free agent class. He, like many other free agents, re-signed early on, or not re-signed early on, re-signed about an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Tommy Neild, of course, we said he just signed with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Jarrell Broxton also signing with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, as is cornerback Jonathan Moxey. And then Saskatchewan keeps one of their own in defensive lineman Mike Rose and defensive lineman Mark Carney going to the Edmonton Elks. The most productive defensive lineman in this class headed to Edmonton. This is big. And so the social medias are all abuzz right now with the signing of Jarrell Broxton in Winnipeg. And just think about what that brings to Winnipeg, right? It brings them possibly the – wow. All right. Brings them one of possibly the best offensive lineman in this free agent class. And so that's a huge get for Winnipeg. Winnipeg is out here making moves, trying to build a team, folks. And the newest thing that just came onto my phone right now, quarterback Taylor Powell, who has been generating a ton of interest in this free agency class, right? He is heading to Edmonton. So that's on a 2-year deal. Oh, shoot. So Taylor Powell headed to the Elks, and they just snuck it in right at the bottom of a post here. But Brendan Bordner also heading to the Elks. So let me just get myself together here. Goodness gracious. Okay. So 2 players heading from Hamilton to Edmond, from the Ticats to the Elks, right? Quarterback Taylor Powell, who generated a lot of interest, not for what he's done so far, but for what he could do, right? What he done so far is next to nothing. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 47 pass yards, but he's a guy who could do stuff in the future. And then Brendan Bordner, oh my goodness, got to find him again. 13-game starter for Hamilton, still just 26 years old. He is also heading to Edmonton as the Elks are now making moves. All right. So that's a 2-year deal for Taylor Powell. There was questions about whether or not the Red Blacks could go out and get him as one of those two teams that needed a quarterback. There was questions about whether Montreal could be involved. And remember, we said Montreal and Ottawa could be the two places that we could really see going after quarterbacks because they're the two that we feel like really need a quarterbacks. But what we see is that backup quarterback market is going to move a bit faster than the starting quarterback market because apparently there's no real starting quarterback out there with the exception of Dustin Crum. We'll be right back. And we're back. So, if you're just joining us, we just saw the quarterback market take its first move in the CFL Free Agency of 2026. So, the quarterback we saw move was an intriguing guy, Taylor Powell, obviously a guy who has a ton of potential but hasn't done a ton in the CFL so far. Taylor Powell is going to be headed to the Edmonton Elks. This is something we see in the NFL sometimes that backup quarterback market moves a little bit faster than the starting quarterback market. And that's because everybody's, trying to figure out what should they play these guys. All right. And so we were talking about quarterbacks. Ottawa. I'm sorry. I just got over to TSN and they're finally talking about CFL Free Agency on here.
Been their primary returner for a number of years. They recently released him. He signed with Montreal, so they have a need there as well. They did on the big fish on the offensive line, but I think the Red Blacks will be looking for some bodies there, and maybe if somebody who can rush off the edge. Lorenzo Baldwin has played that role for them for the last few seasons.
Okay, that's just a replay from earlier. Basically, they're talking about who Ottawa could target, and they're saying backup quarterback. TSN is reporting that Jake Meyer could be the target there. As far as running backs, right? If William Stanback doesn't come back, do they fish in the free agent market? The question is, who are they fishing for in that free agent market if they do go fishing? Because, there's not a ton of guys available. If William Stanback were not to return and were to sign somewhere else, Greg Bell would be the only real free agent target that you could get. The rest of it's going to have to come elsewhere. So, Taylor Powell going to the Elks. So that's what we've seen so far, right? The only movement we've seen so far is Taylor Powell going to the Edmonton Elks. Sorry, just getting all set up here. Okay. Let's see. And of course, we will get you these new signings. We will get you all the news and the updates as it becomes available, right? The moment it becomes available, I will relay it to you right here. This is your own little CFL free agency frenzy. I love watching it for the NFL, and now we're watching it for the CFL as well, right? Latest news, Taylor Powell headed from the Hamilton Ticats to the Edmonton Elks. I'm having a good time. Let's get some more news. Okay, so to catch up with anything I've missed, we're just going to go through and search CFL on the thing here. Okay. All we have now, 3 Down Nation reporting that the Edmonton Elks are agreeing to terms with former Hamilton Ticats offensive lineman Brendan Bordner. Let's see what they got to say about Bordner, because I'm not above looking at other people's articles. Okay, so started 13 games for the Ticats at left tackle last year, as 3 Down Nation reported, right? Benched towards the end of the regular season, so okay. 16 game starter as a rookie was Brendan Bordner, and he is headed to the Elks, right? So people are asking if it's free agent day in the CFL. Yes, it is, and we are here for all of it, right? We have seen movement all across the board. Winnipeg making a ton of moves early. Tommy Neal going to Winnipeg. Jarrell Broxton going to Winnipeg. Jonathan Moxey going to Winnipeg. So we see them making moves. But the team we've seen make even more moves so far is Edmonton. They've signed Taylor Powell to be their backup for the future. They've signed Brendan Bordner to be their new blocker. They've signed Malik Carney to be their new pass rusher. And that's it. So, yeah. We've had 2 teams, the Elks and the Blue Bombers, making tons of moves this morning, and that's mostly what we've seen. We saw Saskatchewan do a couple of re-signings before the free agency period started. They signed Ouellette, who would have been the top running back in the free agent class, and they signed Mike Rose, who would have been one of the top 5 defensive linemen in this class as well. So we're keeping up with it. As much as we can possibly keep up with it, we're keeping up with it. I'm very excited. Oh, you hear the Motorola turn? You hear the Motorola tone? And that means new stuff is going on. All right. Coulter Woodmansey heading to the Edmonton Elks. This is the second offensive lineman they've signed in the past couple of minutes. All right. So Coulter Woodmansey, I believe he was an 18-game starter. If I can find him. Yeah, there he is. 18-game starter, one of 2 18-game starters that we had in this free agent class. Another Hamilton Ticats offensive lineman. And so for Hamilton, you've lost 2 offensive linemen in the span of like 30 minutes. That's not great. For Edmonton, you've gained 2 offensive linemen in the span of 30 minutes. So that's great. If you're an Edmonton Elks fan, you have to be thrilled. You have to be thrilled with how this free agency period is going so far. All right. Very, very exciting. I'm stoked. I'm excited. So you can see the Edmonton Elks right now, they are pillaging from the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Let's just look. In fact, the only player they've got that didn't come over from Hamilton is Malik Carney, right? Malik Carney coming over from Saskatchewan. But other than that, every player they've gotten has come from the Hamilton Ticats. That's Coulter Woodmansey, Brendan Bordner, Taylor Powell, right? They all came over from Hamilton. And then their defensive lineman, Malik Carney, coming over from Saskatchewan. Oh, and Tim Hortons has the $3 breakfast wrap. Woo! Is that Canadian dollars? If that's Canadian dollars, that seems like a pretty good deal. I don't know. Oh, goodness. All right, Sports Center on TSN. I like watching TSN. Get some Canadian sports takes. And they say he had a really good outing. Right, so I do love Canadian television. I love Canadian football. I'm hoping to keep more tabs on that than I have been most of this year, right? I'm really excited about free agency this year. It's a hoot. This is what I'm spending my Sunday doing before I go back to work tomorrow. Of course, you can see we've been on here for almost 2 hours, and I'm going to be on here for like 6 more, man, right? So until the free agency period is done, we're going to be here. In fact, I will even come back on the website with if you go follow me on Blue Sky, right? I'll be there. If you go Arrowhead First, right? At arrowheadfirst.bsky.social, right? I'm right there. And at the end of today, I'll be putting out a list of who are the top free agents still available. And guess what? There's a ton of them right now, right? So the top free agents still available. The top quarterback in this free agent class is still out there. Dustin Crum, he's still there, right? 2 of the top 3 running backs in this class still out there. William Stanback, right? Dual threat running back. Greg Bell, dual threat running back. They're both still out there, right? They could be signed by anybody. Or are they? Jareth Stearns, one of the top young wide receivers going off the board. Montreal Alouettes agreeing to terms with Jareth Stearns. All right, so Jareth Stearns, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, he's heading to Montreal. And so many of his snaps will get replaced by Tommy Neal, who they just signed out of Saskatchewan. All right, so, Jareth Stearns. He was a guy that really had a chance to make it in the NFL as a returner, as a receiver, right? And not a big guy, 5'8", 183, but fairly productive, 48 receptions, 530 yards, 11.04 yards per catch, and about 38 yards per game. That's not amazing, but for a role player, it's absolutely great, right? And if he's your number 3 option, that means you can put 3 wide receivers on the field at any time and not feel bad about it. All of your top free agents are still out there, right? If I was to name the top guy at each position, only Broxton from the offensive lineman and Carney from the defensive lineman have been signed. Other than that, all of your top free agents. Oh, and Ouellette, right? Ouellette has been re-signed as well. So your top quarterback still left out there is the top quarterback as we entered the day, and that's Dustin Crum, right? Dustin Crum, he might have that starter potential, he might not, but he definitely is the biggest quarterback still available right now. At running back, your biggest running backs available are William Stanback and Greg Bell, right? At wide receiver, not Braylon Addison, Dante Myers and who was the other one? Dominique Rhymes are my top 2 wide receivers available, but also Aiden Eberhardt is an excellent wide receiver. So those are your top 3 wide receivers. I would say none of my top 5 wide receivers have gone off the board so far. At offensive lineman, 3 of your top offensive linemen have gone, right? So, but I mean, there's still a ton of guys out there. There's still a ton of solid multi-game starters out there. At defensive lineman, Brian Cox and James Vaughters are your best you have left. Brian Cox, a guy who can play inside or outside based on his size. James Vaughters, a guy who's going to be more on the outside as an edge rusher. Of course, your top 2 defensive linemen already off the board. Malik Carney going to Edmonton, and Jalen Hutchings was already off the board before the free agency period started because he signed with the Minnesota Vikings on a futures deal. But like we said, if the Minnesota Vikings draft somebody, if the Minnesota Vikings get somebody in free agency and they realize they don't think they have room for Jalen Hutchings on the roster, that could be a top-tier defensive lineman coming available in May. All right, so that's a huge deal to keep an eye on. You still got Brian Cox, James Vaughters. My top lineman right now would be Habakkuk Baldonado. All right, the guy who's the younger guy. He still has a ton of potential, and there's teams around looking at him. Right. Okay, so the Rough Riders lose another wide receiver, Joe Robustelli, headed to the Edmonton Elks. All right, so we talked about if Edmonton was going to commit fully to Cody Fajardo at quarterback, they were going to have to make sure to get some guys around him, and they just made a move towards that with Joe Robustelli. Joe Robustelli, one of the 3 biggest guys in this free agent wide receiver class, and he's headed over to the Elks. So 6'3", 220, just a big, big, big fella, right? 544 yards, 3 touchdowns, more of a role player than like a tier 1 guy, but you can't deny the size, and you can't deny that he has a pretty good skill set. I mean, 14 yards per catch, that's pretty good no matter what, but yeah, it's going to be great. Very, very excited. Oh, what the heck? Sorry, my thing just dipped out on me. All right. Good morning. Okay. So the latest one we saw, right? Robustelli agreeing to terms with the Edmonton Elks just a few moments after they signed Coulter Woodmansey, right? So Edmonton Elks making some moves. I'm going to dip out for a moment. I'm going to use the restroom. I'm going to get something to drink, and I will be right back on CFL Free Agency 2026. Hello, and I am back. We are talking CFL Free Agency. I had to go to the restroom. I had to get some tea. I don't know what Canada has besides like Tim Hortons and whatnot, but huge thing here in the southern United States is. I wonder if that's why nobody's. Are you guys not watching because of my accent? I am so sorry. I will try to put on a Canadian accent, all right? We will do better. Okay. So I realize I have a bit of an accent, but we will try to curb that down. The reason I say that is because when I was talking, I just noticed that I had quite the southern accent. All right. So this is not coffee, this is tea. It is past noon here in the central time zone, and I don't want to look like some sort of ne'er-to-do-well drinking coffee after noon, some sort of addict. All right. Ottawa Redblacks have agreed to terms with defensive back Scott Hutter. All right, so Ottawa gets them a guy. Let's go to the chart. We have a full chart of CFL free agents right here, and they also agreed to terms with James Letcher Jr. We will look at that here in just a second. All right, Scott Hutter. Come on. Where's Scott at? I can't see very well. Scott Hutter. I just saw it. Scott Hutter. He is 6'2", 295. So 6'1", 195. One of the larger defensive backs in this class. Not a ton of production this year, but 8 games. Right, did have a tackle. Mostly probably a special teamer. Seems like, right. I'm not overly familiar with him, but returner James Letcher also going to Ottawa. Right. So these are both from the Montreal Alouettes. All right. James Letcher Jr. Okay. James Letcher Jr. going to Ottawa. Right. So James Letcher Jr., more of a kick returner than anything. That was one of the need positions identified for Ottawa when they came into this free agency period. And now they've solved that. So just in the past couple minutes, we have 2 different players going to Ottawa. Defensive back Scott Hutter Jr. of the Montreal Alouettes and wide receiver, kick returner James Letcher Jr. So, pretty big deal. All right. Very, very, very excited, guys. Of course, Montreal getting Jarrett Stearns. Okay, Jarrett Stearns, great little wide receiver. I did a draft profile on him a few years back, and thrilled when he got a shot in the CFL. Like, just wonderful. And we'll keep up with all these transactions as they come in. Of course, go follow my account at Arrowhead First on Blue Sky, right? Go follow, there's no Fan Blitz Network. But go to our website, fanblitznetwork.weebly.com. Check out our cut candidates. Check out our CFL Free Agent Tracker. It's a handy-dandy little tool, right? Print it out. Write down all the free agents as they come in, and then you'll know exactly who's still available. So, here's the Third Down Nation piece on Canadian defensive back Scott Hutter, who just signed with the Red Blacks. So, like we thought, special teamer, right? Torn ACL in 2024. But in 2022, he made 14 starts at safety, 57 tackles, 1 forced fumble, right? So that's pretty good. He's a guy you're getting not for what he's done lately, but for what he could do for you in the future, right? Scott Hutter going to the Ottawa Red Blacks. All right. Woo-woo. Let's see what else we got. So, yeah, those go. Okay. Just getting CFL updates here. Okay. Alouettes flight deck. Devontae Deadman. Okay, so yesterday, apparently, Devontae Deadman, a returner goes to the Montreal Alouettes. Alouettes flight deck, retweeting multiple reports on that. Just trying to figure out where he's at on my list. Okay, it's fine. We're going to write them down. Happens every year. All right, so got it. Devontae Dedmon, all CFL returner, headed to Montreal. Oh, we already seen that. Get out of my life with that nonsense. I want to see what they've tweeted lately. Okay, checking anything new from John Hodge. Justin Dunk. Okay, nothing new, right? Just people retweeting other reports. And on TSN, they're showing curling right now, right? Curling is a hell of a sport, all right? We are now 10 minutes past the 2-hour mark of this broadcast. And I don't know how long you'd let me go. But hell, as long as I got charging my battery, both here and on this here Chromebook, right? I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going all day if I can, all right? So we'll see. We'll see. All right. So super duper duper excited. Okay. Of course, the CFL Free Agency communication window is open. It's been open for about an hour and 17 minutes now. And so if you don't know what the CFL Free Agency communication window is, it's like this. Teams can talk to players and agree to terms on deals, but they can't officially sign anything till February 10th when these players officially become free agents. So a 10-day negotiating window. Okay, so that's how it works. They can't actually sign deals yet, but they can agree to deals right now. There is still a chance some of these players will back out of deals, but it doesn't happen a ton. It happens occasionally, right? It happens occasionally in the NFL too. Their negotiating window is about 3 days, but that's what they can do right now. So here we go. Jake Seresna. We have an update on him. Oh my goodness. So, okay, so we're just looking at stuff right here. We're looking at Jake Seresna, who fully healthy after an injury-plagued season. The expectation is that he will sign with the Blue Bombers or the Red Blacks. I'm just trying to find him here. So give me just 1 minute to locate this fella. Jake Seresna is who we're looking for. And of course, I'm not quite as familiar with most of these guys as I should be. Some of these guys I know from my time studying the NFL. Okay, so Jake Seresna, 6'4", 295 defensive lineman from the Edmonton Elks, 31 years old, 11 games this year, right? and he had just 1 sack, 16 tackles, but he had an interception too, right? So Jake Seresna, the expectation is that he will sign with either the Blue Bombers or the Red Blacks. He will not be re-signing with the Edmonton Elks per John Hodge of 3 Down Nation. All right, so we're rolling right along here in the CFL free agency window here. And our most recent news, Ottawa Redblacks signing Scott Hutter from the Montreal Alouettes. Jake Seresna, defensive end, expected to sign with Winnipeg or Ottawa. This is a big deal as you find those bargains on defensive linemen near, in the middle of this free agency class, because the 2 top defensive linemen, they came off the board early. Malik Carney, he comes off the board early going to the Edmonton Elks, right? And then Jalen Hutchings, he went off the board before free agency even began, going to the Minnesota Vikings. All right. So super excited. I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun out there for the few minutes you watch. My U of I mug. Be great. This is not coffee. This is tea. It's afternoon here in the central United States, and I am not a sicko. I will not drink coffee. Afternoon, I'm not an addict, even though it may seem otherwise. All right, so very excited. I'm having a ton of fun. We're going to move this off to the side because I just don't need that in my face right now. All right, so if you guys got any questions, put them in the chat, man. Put them in the chat. Let's see. What can we edit here? Sorry, we're just at kind of a slow point in free agency at the moment. And so while we wait on decisions to come in, right, I don't stream all that often. You can see there's my logo up there, Fan Blitz Network, right? Cancel. No, go away, please. Something popped up. Yeah. All right. And you can see my logo up here. My nice Alex Smith jersey right in everybody's faces. In fact, we're going to move this. Better or worse? Worse. All right. Alex Smith, absolute legend, right? And we're having a heck of a good time here, passing the 2 hour and 15-minute mark here. Like, let's freaking go. All right. Yeah. As long as you guys stay not watching, I'll stay not giving you the news. I'm just kidding. I'm having a good time. If anybody comes back and watches this later, 2 hours in, thank you. That would be a wild development. We got the 1 like, though. That's important. Sorry. I promise we'll get back to the news. I'm just hungry. 2 hours I've been sitting in front of this camera. I love it. So, no updates yet on the CFL here. Let's see what we can find. So people talking back and forth about quarterback Trey Ford and where will he go? Dustin Nielsen, the play-by-play announcer, and it says, what's the best way to use his skill set if he's not starting and doesn't want to be a gimmick guy, right? Talking about Trey Ford here. And then, yeah. I've never had Tim Hortons because We don't have Tim Hortons here in the United States, but watching TSN, Tim Hortons looks freaking delicious. All right, I'm going to have me some Tim Hortons sometime in my life. I spent half my life wanting White Castle. I finally got it. It did not disappoint. And so I want Tim Hortons too, right? So, very wrapped up in the Canadian culture right now. Very excited about CFL free agency. We've already seen a ton of moves this morning, but we haven't seen a ton of moves in the quarterback market. It's said that quarterback is the most important position in football. It's said that quarterback might be the most important position in all of sports. If that's the case, then we should see some movement pretty soon, because we have seen one movement so far in the quarterback market. And that so far movement is that Taylor Powell has gone from the Hamilton Tiger Cats to the Edmonton Elks, right? And so, yeah, I mean, we still have a few quarterbacks available. We still got Jake Mayer, who could go and be a backup somewhere, but the prize of the free agency quarterback market is probably Dustin Crum or McLeod Bethel-Thompson. McLeod Bethel-Thompson doesn't inspire a ton of great feelings, but he is a solid guy who's been around the CFL for a long time. Dustin Crum, the younger guy, the more mobile guy that could provide a spark for your team, but there's just not a ton of teams looking to replace their starters right now. We talked in the lead up to this that maybe Ottawa, right, where Dustin Crum's from, maybe they would be interested in giving somebody else a starting spot. Maybe Montreal would be interested in giving somebody else a starting spot. That's it. I mean, most of your other teams have guys already. Saskatchewan has Trevor Harris. He's pretty good, right? He's locked in. Winnipeg has Zach Collaros. He's pretty good. He's locked in. Calgary just traded for Vernon Adams. He's good. He's locked in, you know? And so if you're these fellas, if you're a guy like Dustin Crum and you're looking around the league, right, you really only have two options. Montreal might sign you to be a starter, or nothing, right? You're not, I assume he's not going to beat out Nathan Rourke in British Columbia, so we can set that down there. I assume he's not going to, I don't know. So the Toronto, the Argonauts are an interesting team to watch. Do they want to replace Nick Arbuckle at some point? If they go with a younger guy, would they be trying to go to Max Duggan, right? So, you know, do they even care about going to back to Chad Kelly at some point in his career? I know Chad Kelly's good, but Nick Arbuckle's putting like good numbers for you now. And so if you're Dustin Crum, you're really looking around the league and you're not seeing a ton of places you can go. You can either go to Montreal and try to be their starter if they want you, or you can go to the Red Flags and try to be their starter, right, where you just came from. And then, of course, Hamilton has Bo Levi Mitchell, the legend, right? And so if you're Dustin Crum, there's not a bunch of places to go. If you're these teams, you're looking at the top two running backs still available in Stanback and Bell, and you're seeing that there's not a lot behind it. And so the meat of this free agency market is really in the linebacker position and in the wide receiver position. All right, so we got two new. We already saw that. We already saw that too. Get out of my face, dude. Why am I seeing brand new tweets about old crap? Let's see. All right. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to. It's kind of hard to. I'm sorry. It's kind of hard to get a feel for how some of these contracts are playing out and how the cap works and stuff like that. The cap's about $6.5 million. Oh, we got another one. Okay, there we go. So William Stanback. The question was, is he going to return to Ottawa? But Ottawa Redblacks not content to wait around. They have signed all CFL running back Greg Bell, 1,038 yards, 5 touchdowns, 426 receiving yards, and a touchdown to go with it. So, one premier running back left on the market, and that is William Stanback. AJ Ouellette re-signed with the Saskatchewan Roughriders earlier this morning. Greg Bell signing with the Ottawa Redblacks right now. And so, there we go. We'll see. That means the Hamilton Ticats, right? They are going to be looking for a running back. So we will be right back and in about 2 minutes. And we're back. If you're just now joining us, the latest running back news, Greg Bell signing with the Ottawa Redblacks, meaning William Stanback is likely going elsewhere. No new tweets since I left. I'm going to put some of the key players who have signed in the chat, right? So we have Bell to Ottawa. Ouellette to Saskatchewan. Powell to Edmonton. Okay. Stearns to Montreal. Stearns to Montreal. Neeld to Winnipeg. Robustelli to Edmonton. Returner. Deadman. Oh, no, not Demon. Deadman to Montreal. Okay. And James Letcher Jr., returner to Ottawa. So we're moving right along with a lot of these signings here. And that's just the offensive and special team signings. We still got a bunch more on defense that have gone through, right? Offensive lineman Bordner to Edmonton. And Woodmansey to Edmonton. Okay. Top offensive lineman Gerald Broxton to Winnipeg. Winnipeg making moves earlier this morning. It's kind of slowed down lately. Defensive lineman Carney to Edmonton. He was the top defensive lineman in this class as far as edge guys. The top interior guy signed with the Minnesota Vikings. That would be Jalen Hutchings. And Rose re-signed with Saskatchewan yesterday, right before this free agency period started. We still got Shane Ray out there. We still got Habakkuk Baldonado out there. Scott Hutter, DB, signs with Ottawa. Okay. And then DB Jonathan Maxey to Winnipeg. We have not seen either of the punters go. We've not seen either of the long snappers go. I assume we will at some point, right? In NFL news, the Raiders are zeroing in on Clint Kubiak as their next head coach. What a crappy signing. All right. So, if you look in the chat, all of your stuff is right there. Okay. Repost that every once in a while. Copy. Okay, let's see if there's anything new with Justin Dunk. Nope. So, Greg Bell was the most recent free agent to come off the board, and that was a big one, right? So, Greg Bell going to Ottawa, meaning William Stanback is likely headed elsewhere. We have now passed the 2.5 hour mark here. All right, so huge, absolutely huge. You know? We're having a good time here. Now I'm just going to keep a running Google Doc of who's signed where. If you look in the chat, you can see who's all signed, right? We have a ton of guys that have signed. I'm having a wonderful time. So, yeah. The biggest signing recently, Greg Bell, running back to the Ottawa Redblacks. All right. I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back. All right, and I'm back. We are about 4 minutes past the 2.5 hour mark here on Fan Blitz Network. You can see the logo up there. And what we're doing is we are discussing CFL Free Agency. Look in the chat to see who has signed where. So if you look at the top of the chat, that's our most recent signing. Greg Bell going to Ottawa, right? So be sure to keep up with all the signings there in the chat, right? Lets you know who has gone where. And of course, you can go on to fanblitznetwork.weebly.com and get our official, the Fan Blitz Network, not official, the CFL. Our Fan Blitz Network CFL 2026 free agency guide. I know it doesn't look like much, but it's handy. It's got the free agents, it's got their names, it's got the stats, it's got how many games they've played, right? So it has all of their relevant stuffs. And it's got a handy dandy little space where you can go down with each one and go and sign up, right? Sign which player is getting what. All right. So I'm going to put the link here in the chat. Okay. All right. Link for that is in the chat. Just copy and paste that into your browser. It'll take you to our website. And yeah. What? No, cancel. Get rid of that. Why is that there? Let's try this one more time. This is wild. All right. Whatever. This is being ridiculous. Sorry, technical difficulties here, but I posted the link in the chat to our CFL free agent guide. I'm going to pin that to the chat real quick. Okay. So that'll appear right at the top of the chat, and you can go through and keep up with us, right? So very exciting stuff. We are seeing tons of signings here. No move or very little movement in the quarterback market so far, but that doesn't matter. Oh, we don't care about that. Quit reposting nonsense. I hate it when they do that. They're like, I'm just going to repost what the other guy did. It's like, no, I don't care. All right. So, yeah. Greg Bell, the most recent big signing. All right. So, we've seen some people come off the board, but the top quarterback out there, Dustin Crum, he's still available. Only one of the top 3 running backs is still available, and that is William Stanbeck. Let's see. Few of the top receivers still available. Braylon Addison still available. Dante Myers still available. And the 2 big-bodied guys, Dominique Rhymes and Aiden Eberhardt. Both tall, both big-bodied, both very productive. They are still available. So a ton of talent out there at wide receiver. Most of the movement in the wide receiver market so far has been mid-tier guys. We've seen Jareth Stearns go off, and he's very good, very young guy, but he's not one of those top-tier wide receivers in the CFL. We've seen Tommy Neal go off the board again, another 500-yard guy, and Joe Robustelli, another 500-yard guy. So we've seen a few mid-tier wide receivers go off the board. We haven't seen a ton of movement in terms of these top-tier wide receivers going off the board. Dante Myers, Dominique Rhymes, Aiden Eberhardt. These guys are still hanging around, and I assume, I don't know, that it's because some big deals are being negotiated for these guys, and these kind of deals take time. But, of course, we've seen some big deals negotiated already. Gerald Broxton just got a $270,000 a year deal from the from Winnipeg, right? Yeah, so Coulter Woodmansee got a big deal from the Elks, and so did Brendan Bordner as the Elks went shopping earlier today. Just checking in on the social medias here. Wish we could get a few more updates, but here we are. So, people are memeing about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Fun stuff, very fun stuff. So, searching trending stuff for the CFL. All right. So, Hamilton fans talking about the need for a middle linebacker, right? They got some of the same guys we got on their list. So, just looking, Ottawa agrees with defensive back Scott Hutter. Sorry. I'm just looking at some of these CFL memes, and they're funny. This will be a season for the books. Kyron Moore with the Edmonton Elks saying this is going to be a season for the books. So, Saskatchewan fans upset that Malik Carney has gone away to Edmonton, right? Hoping they re-sign Habakkuk Baldonado, right? $270,000 per year for Malik Carney. That's what it costs to have a pass rusher, man. Like, you know, you have a roughly just under a $7 million cap in the CFL. And you got to sign, 52 guys with that? All right, let's see. CFL roster size. So 45-player active roster, but I want to see the off-season roster size. Okay, so a max number of 85 players. Presumably 75 of those are 75 of those are on the cap, right? So let's see what the official cap is this year. CFL salary cap number. Okay, 6.28 million. All right, so we go 6.28 million, and we're going to divide that by 75 players that got to be on the cap, right? So, in theory, this gives you $83,000 to spend per year on each player. So let's look at how that breaks down. What is the minimum roster? The minimum contract for a CFL player? I'm not sure. Let me check that real quick. What's the minimum CFL salary? All right. So all right. So in theory, you got $87,000 to spend on each guy if you got 75 guys under the cap, right? Minimum salary is $70,000. By the way, I would definitely play for that. So $70,000 your minimum salary there, and it's not bad. But that means if you're going to start paying other guys, right, you're really going to have to get creative with that cap space, right? 75 guys at $70,000 minimum salary. That doesn't leave a lot of room to play with, right? Now, certain guys like draft picks, they don't count against the cap. So I'm going to take a break. I'll be right back. Look in the chat to see who all has been signed so far. We have news. All right. So, leading into this free agency period, it was speculated that Jake Meyer might be a target for the Ottawa Redblacks. And sure enough, right? Saskatchewan quarterback Jake Meyer going to Ottawa. Big deal, because this is some of the first big movement we've seen in the quarterback market so far. We've seen Taylor Powell go to the Edmonton Elks to be their potential backup of the future. And now we've seen Jake Meyer go to Ottawa to be their quarterback. Now, this is important. I'll tell you why this is important once I get this written down. So, the reason this might have some significance is because Dustin Crum is with the Ottawa Redblacks, or was with the Ottawa Redblacks. He's a free agent from the Ottawa Redblacks right now. And the Ottawa Redblacks were two of the team, or one of the two teams that we thought might look for a quarterback this offseason to try and come in and be their starter, right? Now, I don't think Jake Meyer's going to be that, right? No, he could be, right? 3,800 pass yards, 22 passing touchdowns in 2024, right? So that's not that long ago. He could, but it makes it very likely that Drew Brown will be the starter going into next year. It also makes it pretty likely that Dustin Crum's not coming back. And so the question is, where does Dustin Crum go? He could still re-sign with Ottawa, right? So they had three backups on the roster. One retired. One's a free agent. And the other one, Crum, is also a free agent. So really all they have right now is Drew Brown and, of course, Jake Meyer. But is there room for Dustin Crum to have a role on that team? And if not, where does he go? Because unless he goes to Montreal, there's really no starting spots left, right? If Ottawa's going forward committed to Drew Brown as the starter, then there's really not a ton of starting positions left because there's not many more quarterbacks that you can say we're confident that Dustin Crum will beat this guy out or give him any sort of competition, right? He's not competing with Bo Levi Mitchell in Hamilton. He's not probably competing with Trevor Harris in Saskatchewan. He's not competing with Vernon Adams Jr. in Calgary. He's not competing with Zach Collaros in Winnipeg, right? And so when you look around the league, there's not a lot of spots for him to come and compete for a starting job if you're Dustin Crum. There are two spots, right? Drew Brown with Ottawa, or he could come in and compete with Davis Alexander in Montreal. Now, maybe, right? Maybe you could have him compete with Nick Arbuckle in Toronto. Nick Arbuckle's been kind of up and down over the course of his career. Chad Kelly, has had his offseason issues that were pretty bad at times. And then he has had his injuries also that have kept him out. So maybe you bring him in there to compete for a starting job. But really, Montreal is the only surefire might get a shot, right? And then after that, it's Toronto or bust. So I'm interested to see where Crum goes. Is he just going to be a gimmick guy? Is he ever going to get a chance to be a starter? We'll see. But it's interesting to think about. I'm going to be back. I'm going to go use the restroom, and I'll be back when we have more news. Yeah. And of course, TSN, still showing curling over here. Like, come on, let's get the CFL free agency news going. We have seen some huge signings already in the CFL. And so what you have to ask yourself is, why does TSN not care about you, the football fan? All right? It's whatever. You know what? Where TSN fails, FBN is here for you, the Fan Blitz Network, because we are all about the fans. All right? So, you're going to hear people around my house. You're going to hear my daughter running around, and that's because we're keeping it casual. I'm going to be on here all day. We are about to pass the 3-hour mark that we have been on camera, and yeah, I'm stoked. We've seen a ton of free agent movement, right? Just absolutely wonderful. I've had a great time with this so far. And so our most recent signing, we saw possibly the biggest quarterback news of the day so far. Jake Mayer going to Ottawa, right? And that kind of leaves Dustin Crum out in the cold. The Kansas City Chiefs are in need of a quarterback. And so, in the back of my mind, I always wonder, now that legal tampering period is open, now that Dustin Crum's contract is about to be up, is he getting a call from his former team, the Kansas City Chiefs, who would like an extra arm for the offseason because quarterback Pat Mahomes is not going to be available? That would be a huge deal for me, personally. Right? Of course, my account is Arrowhead First. Love the Kansas City Chiefs. Love watching CFL football. And so that would just be bringing my two worlds together here and having former Chief Dustin Crum, who I thought was going to be the next Julian Edelman. I thought he was going to convert to wide receiver and really solve our problems. It didn't really work. But he went to the CFL and has become a very successful running quarterback, a pretty successful passing quarterback, and definitely, in my opinion, the top quarterback in this free agent market. I would like to see him make his way back to the NFL, and he's still young enough to do it. Guys like Bo Levi Mitchell, right, they might never get their shot because they're just not – they're a little too old to be doing it now, right? Nathan Rourke got a shot in the NFL, and I would like to see Dustin Crum get the same with his former team needing a quarterback right now. Now, I don't know exactly how that sits typically with the Canadian audience, because I know if I was somebody who the CFL was my primary football league, I would kind of be upset to watch, some of our best guys go to NFL rosters and kind of, get dismissed by the fans and everything else, only to come back and have to fight for a roster spot in the CFL later because they weren't there for the offseason. And so that's something that I would worry about. But I really think there's a shot that Dustin Crum could come in, make this roster as a primary backup, especially if Chris Oladokun is going to be the starter for Kansas City with Pat Mahomes out during the offseason. And there's a chance that Pat Mahomes could be out even later, right? Because he had this injury in December. This was like, a quick recovery from an ACL injury is considered 10 months, which would put him back, in October-ish, late September. And that means he might not be ready for week 1. But really, this is a 12-month injury to fully recover from, and especially somebody like Pat Mahomes, right? He's 30 years old. He relies on his mobility a lot. And so this might take even longer, even if he attacks the rehab. So if I'm Kansas City, I am looking to the CFL. I'm looking to the guy we formerly had on our roster, Dustin Crum, and I'm saying this is a guy that can come in and be a part of the team right now. He has experience as a starter. He has experience in big moments. He has that running ability, that mobility that we like so much out of Chris Oladokun. I think he could come in and challenge for a spot on this roster right now. Of course, I also want the Chiefs to draft a guy, right? But I'm getting away from myself. I'm getting away from what we're here for. And we're here to talk about CFL free agency, right? But the biggest part of the quarterback market in CFL free agency right now is Dustin Crum. And so the question is, where does he go? What does he do? Until I get the little Motorola tone and I get a notification here saying that as we've crossed the 3-hour mark now, that Dustin Crum is heading to this team or that team, we're going to continue to speculate on where he's going to go, because that's what you do with football. quarterback is the most important position in football. It might be the most important position in all of sports. And so, therefore, it's essential that we know and we speculate on where Dustin Crum is going to go. But there's so many players on the market outside of him. Only really one premier running back left, right? William Stanback is the only premier running back left. 698 yards, 4 touchdowns rushing, 278 receiving yards, and a touchdown there, right? But other than that, right, your top producer is shy of 500 scrimmage yards at running back, and that's Sean Thomas Erlington. Of course, Kadeem Carey, right? Kadeem Carey did have a big year in 2024, but not last year. In 2024, he had 1,060 yards and 7 touchdowns. So if you're looking for a veteran back that could provide you that same sort of thing, if you've missed out on a Greg Bell, if you've missed out on an A.J. Ouellette, if you've missed out on a William Stanback, right? Kadeem Carey, in my opinion, is like the next guy up because Sean Thomas Erlington, right, he's 33 years old, just like Kadeem Carey, and he hasn't had the same sort of production in his career. So if you're looking for a running back and he missed out on the top guys, hands down, Kadeem Carey is the guy for me. You have some big guys here, Langley and Tanner Green. They're more fullbacks than anything. But that'll be interesting to see where they go. I mean, really, it's wild that the CFL only has 5 true tailbacks in free agency, and then a handful of like fullback hybrids. But you have a ton of wide receivers, so that's good, right? If you're in the wide receiver market, this is the year for you because really, not only are there a ton of wide receivers, but none of them have been signed, right? Some of your mid-tier guys have been signed. Jarrett Stearns, younger guy, 500 yards roundabouts. He's been signed. Robustelli and Tommy Neal, both big-bodied guys at 6'3", right? They've both been signed, but they're both like 500-yard guys. But you still have a ton of guys available. 26-year-old, 6'1" wide receiver Carrick Wheatfall, 700 yards almost in – 655 yards in 2025. He's still available. Aiden Eberhard, considered possibly the top wide receiver on the market. He is still available. We're seeing tweets about Greg Bell, which we don't care about. We already know. Like, Ryan Dinwiddie's awesome, but who cares? Like, we want the next bit of news. We don't care about the last bit of news. You can find the last bit of news right there in the chat. That's why we're keeping that stuff on. That's why we're keeping a running list. The last person we had signed was Jake Mayer. Like, come on. We don't want backup quarterback news. We want starter news. All right. The last starter news we had was Greg Bell going to Ottawa, right? I don't know. Ottawa might be my team. I have no idea. I don't really have an official CFL fandom. So I'm open for recommendations, right? If anybody wants to hop in here and tell me what team I should be supporting, right? Of course, if there's any Donald Trump teams out there, they can fuck off. But, oh my goodness. Did you hear that? These kids are crazy. You saw it here first, chat. Kids are wild. I promise they're not unsupervised. We're watching them. They're just crazy. I don't know. They're wild. 1 second. Hi. Woo! We are back. Guess what? Still no news.